Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I guess my question for you guys today is, how is everybody surviving right now? Like, what are you guys doing? I see how bad the economy is and how expensive things are. Like when I go to the grocery store or the gas station or the doctor's office, and the cost of living continues to go up. Wages remain stagnant. We're in a terrible jobs market. Everything is fake, basically, and it doesn't seem like it's going to get better anytime soon. So I'm wondering what people have done to prepare themselves and how you're surviving, because it's really bad. And I'm just going to share with you guys some headlines. I'm going to try to keep this video as brief as possible. You know how difficult that is for me, but just to show you some of the headlines we're seeing in the news, some of the latest economic data coming out, and I want to get your thoughts on this. So this is from the Financial Times. Can the dollar remain the king of currencies? Like, is the dollar going to remain the world reserve currency? That's a question being asked. This was published just a few days ago. The greenback's dominance was forged on trade alliances and institutions. Now that era is at risk of drawing to a close. So are you ready for the dollar to basically be worthless, which it pretty much already is? 19 reasons why the Fed is at the heart of our economic problems. Highly recommend this article. This is from Zero Hedge. CNBC, 23andMe files for bankruptcy and Wojcicki steps down as CEO. So, yeah, 23andMe, and it's not just 23andMe, by the way. It is so many other, Joanne Fabrics, Forever 21, so many of these companies that have been around forever that maybe survived the last economic crisis are filing for bankruptcies, or they're, closing down half of their stores. And this one in particular is concerning because of the data that people have, like their DNA data with 23andMe. That's now going to get sold to the highest bidder. 23andMe filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in Missouri federal court Sunday night, and Wojcicki has resigned from her role as chief executive immediately, though she will remain a member of the board. The filing comes after a turbulent period for the genetic testing company, where it has struggled to generate recurring revenue, failed to stand up viable businesses, and of course suffered a cyber attack. And just going with that, the Harvard Gazette, what happens to your data if 23andMe collapses, which it probably will. Health law policy expert says biotech firms' uncertain future shows need for protections of personal and genetic info. So if you use 23andMe, if you have your DNA data stored with this company, I would go delete that information immediately if you can. This is from the Wall Street Journal. Federal Reserve posted loss of $77.6 billion in 2024, last year. Interest expenses outpaced interest income for the second straight year, though the losses were smaller than previous years. Right, so they're losing money. European officials concerned over relying on the Fed for US dollar funding in times of market stress. Reuters carry the report on discussions between European central banking and supervisory officials questioning whether they can still rely on the Federal Reserve to provide dollar funding in times of market stress. Reuters cites 6 people familiar with the matter. Sources told Reuters they consider it highly unlikely the Fed would not honor its funding backstops, and the Fed has given no signals to suggest that. Oh, really? But given the dismantling of long-standing U.S. policy in several areas by President Trump, the question is being raised over the possibility the government might pressure the Fed to suspend the dollar backstops. So that's interesting. This is from Fortune. U.S. debt could explode over 200% of GDP in 2 decades if the president's tax cuts become permanent, CBO says, putting it at unsustainable levels. Come on. The debt has been at unsustainable levels for a very long time. So let's just be real. Debt ceiling. This is from Bloomberg. U.S. debt ceiling breach estimated to hit as early as mid-July. The U.S. could breach the debt ceiling sometime between mid-July and October if Congress doesn't act. The Treasury Department has been using accounting maneuvers known as extraordinary measures since January 21 in an effort to avoid breaching the 36.1 trillion limit. The Treasury has 163 billion of extraordinary measures left in addition to its cash pile to help keep paying the government's bills, the department said. This is unsustainable, guys, and it's absolutely ridiculous to see what's happening to our country, that just the total destruction of the country, certainly the wiping out of what was left of the middle class, and the continued siphoning of that wealth, the transferring of that wealth to the elites, to the 1% and 2%, who are, the wealth inequality in this country is so bad. I don't think more needs to even be said about that. Ray Dalio warns of U.S. debt crisis heart attack within 3 years. Goldbridge's founder on Bitcoin, and why the new administration must get to work on deficit reduction. Like, guys, do we really think that that's going to happen? Dalio, the billionaire founder of hedge fund Bridgewater Associates, has a warning for the Trump administration. Commit right now to reducing the deficit or risk a major debt crisis within 3 years. Yeah, that's coming regardless, guys. I hate to say it, but just look at the debt market. If you don't do it, you're going to be in trouble, Dalio said in an interview on the Odd Lots podcast. I can't tell you exactly when it will come. It's like the heart attack. You're getting closer. My guess would be 3 years, give or take a year, something like that. Dalio's warning comes as Trump's team is grappling with the twin goals of maintaining large tax breaks while also reducing an annual deficit that most recently reached $1.8 trillion. It also comes as Dalio promotes his latest book, in which he explains how debt cycles work and advocates for an intermediate cut to the deficit to 3% of GDP. And so, it's just more of the same. The U.S. could run out of cash by July. By July, they run out of money, and they're just blowing through massive amounts of money, even though Elon Musk has, put his Doge team together to try to eliminate fraud and waste. I don't think that that's happening enough to really make a difference here, because this has just been going on for so long. Business Insider, it's not just America with a debt problem. World governments face the highest debt costs since 2007. It's the entire system is a debt-based system. Debt financing costs have jumped to the highest level since 2007 among OECD governments. Interest payment as a share of GDP outpaced defense and safety services. The U.S. accounted for over 2/3 of OECD gross borrowing in 2024. So people are living off of their credit cards. There are people who have 6 different credit cards that are all maxed out. And if they didn't have these credit cards, how would they be paying their bills right now? How would they be surviving? You think that you have one kind of like emergency, say that you have to get new brakes, or you have to replace your tires, or you have to fix your transmission or something. You're looking at hundreds of dollars, and so many people, they don't have even that much saved for some kind of emergency, so they put everything on credit cards, and some of these credit cards are at like 22% interest, so they're spending a lot to borrow money that they don't have, that they then have to pay back with extraordinary interest. Meanwhile, the people at the top 1% and 2%, they're the people profiting off of this, and they're all laughing about it. They're getting richer, everybody else is getting poorer. Interest payments have taken the biggest bite out of government budgets since 2007 as debt financing costs outpace spending on defense, public safety, and housing in many countries. Yeah, you're just paying to service the debt at this point. We may not even have enough money to pay off the interest. Imagine that, having to borrow to pay off interest on other money that you borrowed. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development found debt servicing costs accounted for 3.3% of GDP across 38 member economies, a sharp increase from 2.4% in 2021. Lovely, guys. Absolutely lovely. Now, this clip is Jerome Powell 11 months ago. He was asked about stagflation. Now, listen to what he said then, because this is hilarious.
In addition, I would say, most forecasters, including our forecasting, was that that last year's level of growth was very high, 3.4% in, I guess, the fourth quarter, and probably.
What a joke. Does this man ever tell the truth? Do any of them?
Not going to be sustained and would come down, but that would be our forecast. That wouldn't be stagflation. That would still be to a very healthy level of growth. And of course, with inflation, we will return inflation to 2%.
Yeah, okay, when is that happening, sir?
And that won't be, so I don't see the stag or the inflation, actually.
Wow. They'll just lie to your face. Today, the Fed raised both unemployment and inflation forecasts for 2025 while cutting GDP growth estimates. We are now seeing the stag in inflation. Unbelievable. And now, of course, he's bringing out transitory again. You guys remember when Janet Yellen said this about inflation? Unreal.
It can be the case that it's appropriate sometimes to look through inflation if it's going to go away quickly without action by us, if it's transitory. And that can be the case in the case of tariff inflation. I think that would depend on the tariff inflation moving through fairly quickly, and it would depend critically as well on.
Wow. Oh yeah, guys, don't worry. The tariff inflation is only going to be transitory. This is great, Powell. Base case is that inflation will be transitory. Yeah, pretty much the vibe there that I think we all get when we hear that. Wall Street, who holds the ballooning U.S. government debt, even as the Fed and foreign holders unloaded Treasury securities in the fourth quarter? An increasingly important question in iffy times. Here are the holders who dumped and who bought. When the incredibly ballooning U.S. national debt reached $36.22 trillion in January, it hit the, quote, debt ceiling, with which Congress prevents the government from borrowing the money needed to spend the money that Congress told it needs to spend. In the past, just before the government ran out of cash, Congress makes a deal with itself to raise the debt ceiling, upon which the debt spikes by hundreds of billions of dollars in just a few days, as the government borrows huge amounts of money to refill its checking account. Absolutely lovely people here. The flat part followed by spikes in the chart reflect that dynamic. These are the Treasury securities that private and public entities in the U.S. and across the world hold as interest-earning assets. The question is, who holds this debt and who has been buying it, even as the Fed has been shedding its holdings? Yeah, probably a lot of China. Yeah, look at this. Look at this. The ballooning national debt. You couldn't make this up if you wanted to. U.S. government entities hold $7.34 trillion in the debt. The public held the remaining $28.83 trillion in Treasury securities at the end of the fourth quarter. The public held these treasuries by type of security as of the end of February, published by the Treasury Department. Unreal. And then foreign entities hold $8.5 trillion. So that's who is holding on to the debt. Seeking alpha, the Federal Reserve dithers and the gold bull rallies to all-time record highs. The Federal Reserve maintained the federal rate at 4.25%, causing minor market fluctuations. Gold prices rose, indicating a bullish trend for precious metals. Obviously, inflation remains elevated, and the Fed plans 2 rate cuts this year, potentially weakening the dollar. who's been saying this and boosting gold prices further? Gold has rallied significantly. However, technical indicators are suggesting potential corrections in geopolitical and economic factors could impact future trends. Indeed. This is from Commercial Observer. Distressed real estate debt could spark another regional banking crisis. That could, in turn, threaten a precarious U.S. economy and open further opportunities for alternative lenders. Oh, great, another regional banking crisis. And I just wanted to include this because I thought it was wild. Trump media signs an agreement to partner with Crypto.com to launch ETFs. I don't know why we're doing that. Mortgage payments now eat up 40% of household income. This is the highest in over 30 years. And there's one factor that could push it even higher. Yeah, housing is way unaffordable. There are so many people that have already been priced out of the housing market. And to spend almost half of what you make just on your rent, that's ridiculous, or your mortgage. Nearly every major asset class has seen near triple-digit returns over the past 2 years, but the housing market, it has been mostly flat. In fact, housing has even lagged behind wage growth since 2022. That's highly unusual. Household value and mortgages percent of GDP. Historically, housing and the stock market tend to move together, but right now we're seeing a rare divergence. As traders, when we spot an anomaly, our instincts tell us to pay attention. Unreal. This isn't the first time we have seen a divergence. In the 1990s, stocks surged while real estate remained flat. Then, as stocks reached extreme valuations by 1998 and 1999, housing prices suddenly took off. This process is called rotation. It's when investors shift capital between assets based on relative value and economic conditions. A similar divergence happened in 2012. The stock market gained 110% from 2009 to 2012, while real estate prices fell. But once stocks got expensive, investors likely rotated those profits into the cheap real estate sector at the time. This is where we think we are right now. Stock prices are at their highest valuation since 1999. I mean, how ridiculous is that? We think there's a good chance the housing market actually begins to catch up to the rest of financial assets. If this happens, you can see home prices rise another 50% in the coming years, similar to 2019 through 2022. If this were to happen, it would be devastating for those already struggling with affordability and current prices. Housing unaffordability is already at record levels, absolutely, with the average mortgage eating up 40% of median household income. They used to say that your rent should be about one paycheck, one paycheck out of a month, right? So like 1/4 maybe of your income. If prices rise further, it could push home ownership out of reach for an even larger share of the population. And there are so many people already priced out. Of course, that would make things worse. So very, very concerning things to think about here. Just 44.4% of workers have a positive outlook for their business over the next 6 months, as measured by the Glassdoor Employee Confidence Index, which offers a choice among positive, negative, or neutral outlooks. This is the lowest figure since Glassdoor launched the tracker in 2016, unsurprisingly. Yeah, like it's not a good time right now for businesses. The delinquency rate of multifamily housing is increasing, and that is concerning. It's increasing to where things were like right after the 2008 financial crisis. So that's concerning and lovely. CNN Business, student loan delinquencies are nearing a record high as Trump prepares to shutter the Department of Education, or the Department of Indoctrination, if we're being honest. And, this is sad. I feel bad about this, and I understand this is like This affects a lot of young people who've already been priced out of the housing market, who have these, you know, thousands of dollars in student loan debt. I think it's sad, but it's a good thing that he's shutting down the Department of Education, and it's about time that somebody did something about the predatory student loan industry, because that's very sad. Student loan delinquencies are expected to climb to a new record high following the end of an on-ramp period last year for missed payments. So now these people who've been deferring their student loan payments, they're going to have to start paying their loans again. Student loan delinquencies are poised to hit record highs, and more than 9 million borrowers could see their credit scores tank in the first quarter of this year, according to new data released Wednesday. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York released its latest snapshot on student loan borrowing, a biennial report that tracks debt loads, delinquencies, and related impacts to credit scores. The 2025 student loan update showed an estimated 15.6% of federal loans, a new record, were past due at the end of last year, with more than $250 billion in delinquent debt held by 9.7 million borrowers. New student loan delinquencies have been shown to take massive bites out of credit scores, with deductions averaging 87 points for subprime borrowers to steep 171-point knocks for those with super prime or excellent credit standing. So that's just lovely. You know, like, things are so unsustainable, so bad, that maybe this correction is needed, right? Reuters, U.S. consumers slow spending as inflation bites, Synchrony says. So Synchrony is a lender. U.S. consumers curb spending amid high prices and economic concerns. Purchase volumes are down across the industry, Synchrony says. Americans have been accumulating more and more debt. Delinquencies are expected to increase as student loan forbearance ends, which we just talked about. U.S. consumers have been curbing their spending in response to high prices and a worsening economic outlook, according to consumer finance company Synchrony Financial. Yes, the consumer is maxed out. People, their credit cards are maxed out. They have no more. There's nothing more that can be bled out of them, right? Like, they've already parasitized so much from the US consumer that there's like literally nothing left to take. Americans have been accumulating more and more debt and strain in their finances, with delinquencies edging up for auto loans, credit cards, and home credit lines, the Federal Reserve said last month. Philadelphia Federal Reserve President Patrick Harker also warned trouble may be brewing for the economy, which is showing signs of stress in the consumer sector, with consumer confidence waning. The belt tightening indicates Americans whose finances are broadly healthy, yeah, right, have been stretching their finances amid persistent inflation. You think? Most clients are still keeping up their loan repayments, he added. Yeah, we'll see how that goes in the next 5 years. My goodness. This is just another sign of the times. Klarna has announced DoorDash is now one of their official partners. Customers can choose to break their payments into 4 equal interest-free installments or delay them until their next payday. So the American consumer is so tapped out, they're so maxed out, that some of them are going to use this to, like, basically borrow money for their DoorDash. What does that tell you? Like, if you can't afford to pay for your DoorDash order the day that you are ordering it, why don't you just cook at home? Why don't you just make something with groceries, which is probably going to be less expensive, and you get more for, you know, the money. Like, you're going to get more food that way. This is just ridiculous, though. There are people who are going to be financing, like, their DoorDash. I don't even know what to say. The Debt Collective says we are increasingly forming into a creditocracy and an oligarchy where the wealthy elite few exploit us all for endless profit. Increasingly, where have you been? Like, that's how the system works. They will limit our income and force us to borrow for basic needs so they can make another dollar. Yeah, that's how it works. And they cite here, halting Social Security and forcing us to borrow. Klarna working with DoorDash. Yeah, I mean, that's the system that apparently we're moving into. Now, the Joe Rogan podcast posted this. POV, in 2020, you buy the same stocks as members of Congress versus following the S&P 500. So I just find, yeah, guys, it's called insider trading. That's what they do, and nobody, like, none of them ever get in trouble for it. They don't even get investigated. So I just thought that was funny. Gee, look at that. The 1920s, 1980s, and 1990s all had their melt-ups last longer than most anticipated, as history playing out once again. And we see here the great crash of the 1920s, Black Monday from the 1980s, the dot-com bubble in the 90s, and looks like we're approaching the next one. Yeah, of course, history does repeat itself, but that's going to happen in the debt market. Now, just listen to this too. We're talking about unsustainability, and to really drive home for people the current situation. Dollar Tree bought Family Dollar back in 2015. So this was not long ago, like 10 years ago, for $9 billion. It just sold it for $1 billion. So that is an $8 billion loss. Hello? The top 1% of Americans have enough money to buy 99% of US homes. If you want to know in a nutshell, like, what's wrong with the country, this right here is the answer. That America was a great country because we had a strong middle class. We don't have that anymore. We now have the wealthy elites who have gotten richer and richer and richer with these continual transfers of wealth, consolidation of businesses, of power. That's what's been happening. And so now you have this situation that is unsustainable. This is not a serious country, and this is not a sustainable way of living for anybody. The US's annual GDP growth is projected to fall to 2.2% in 2025 and 1.6% in 2026, down from earlier forecasts of 2.4% this year and 2.1% next year. Oh, wow. Is anybody surprised by this? It's going to get worse the next 2 years, not better. Who is surprised? Warren Buffett is getting rich faster than any other person in 2025 per Business Insider. Very interesting. Gen Z is expected to become the largest and richest economic force by 2035. According to a recent Bank of America report, the youngest generation of workers will amass over $74 trillion in income by 2040. Listen, I'm going to say X to doubt. This is what they constantly say, that, oh yes, this generation is going to inherit the wealth of the baby boomers. Like, do you really think that that's happening? They don't care about leaving money to, their posterity. Look what they've done to their children, to their grandchildren. Like, let's be honest here. It's no wonder younger generations, millennials and Gen Z, are so economically anxious. Larry Fink of BlackRock has said, they believe my generation, the baby boomers, have focused on their own financial well-being to the detriment of who comes next, and in the case of retirement, they're right. Oh, you don't say. And BlackRock is a big part of the reason why people can't afford homes, right? The number of Gen Z households receiving unemployment benefits rose by nearly a third in the past year, the most of any generation per Fortune. Lovely. And from Axios, debt stress signals growing cracks in household finances. You think? In the aggregate, American household finances are looking just fine. What are you talking about? According to who? but nobody lives in the aggregate. There's evidence of rising financial strain for a meaningful slice of the population. Oh, really? You're just figuring this out now. Wonderful. The big picture cracks have appeared in many household balance sheets over the last year and have widened further in the final months of 2024, leaving some Americans more vulnerable to any disruptions that are to come. But it has not been obvious from top line numbers, as disproportionately affluent families have benefited from a surging stock market, rising home prices, and fixed rate mortgage debt held over from the low interest environment of 3 years ago. What they're saying: the number of people falling behind on debt payments has risen sharply, even though households collectively built up their holdings of liquid assets, yeah, right, at the end of last year, wrote Samuel Toms, chief U.S. economist at Pantheon Marco, in a note. The net worth of American households, the cumulative value of their assets minus debts, edged to 160.3 trillion in the fourth quarter, up 9.3% from a year earlier. Household debt service as a share of disposable personal income was at 11.3% in quarter four, below its pre-pandemic levels per Federal Reserve data. But the share of outstanding credit card debt that is more than 90 days delinquent rose to 11.4% in the fourth quarter, the highest in 13 years. Indeed, in the last 2 decades, it has only been higher during and immediately following the 2008 Great Recession. Looking forward, consumers anticipate further difficulty handling their debts. The average odds people place that they won't be able to make a minimum debt payment in the next 3 months rose 14.6%, the highest since early in the pandemic and well above 2019 levels. Those stresses for borrowers have occurred against a backdrop of rising asset prices and a strong job market. There is no strong job market. Oh my God. The numbers could shoot higher if federal cutbacks and trade wars generate higher unemployment or further wobbles in financial markets. Yeah, the average American is incredibly in debt, doesn't have $500 saved, and, you know, is totally maxed out. Most of them are living paycheck to paycheck. They don't have health insurance. If they have a dental emergency, God forbid, or, they have to buy something for their kid for school, like they don't have money saved. I'm interested to know, like, what are people doing to survive, and what do you guys think is going to happen in the next year or two? I'm not going to say that, like, there's going to be a massive crash or anything like that. I'm saying that what we have now is so unsustainable that when the crash does happen, when all of these artificial bubbles burst, and they will, it is going to be very bad. It's going to be very ugly. But I'm interested to know what you guys think, and I hope you all have a good day. Read!